as we celebrate in the framework of the 5th anniversary of the forum, and our main slogan, which is Water Unites Us, and you know us by that. So, and the need for collaboration, just a simple phrase as that means a lot. We are in need for collaboration, probably more now than ever. And water is the link and has proven historically to be the link to collaborate. So we are pursuing and we are kind of using it in a way to unite us even more, the US and Mexico border region. And to start, I'm going to briefly describe what we have done, where we are on over the last 5 years, pretty quickly. The executive report is available on the website and is going to be posted here in the chat. If you want to go into the details, I'm just going to do the highlights. The members of the board of the forum from 2019 until today. These are the people that make this happen. And thank you personally and institutionally to all of you for being here. This is our advisory committee that has been supportive and advising and guiding the efforts of the forum towards the future, towards the sustainability. And our moderator for today's event is Dr. Gabriel Eckstein, which is part of our advisory committee. And I know that Carmen has just signed in as well. And I know that Jude has signed in as well. So thank you. Thank you very much for the support and for being here today. Just to remember, why are we here? What are the values that actually drive our initiatives or motive to move forward? Of course, the collaboration. There's no other way to do things on the border without collaboration. Equity. Everybody has to be included. Everybody has to be involved, and every voice has to be heard. Sustainability. What we propose has to be based on science and therefore has to be sustainable. Otherwise, it doesn't work in the short term. Innovation based on science, technology, and of course, communication. It's not just about to be right, scientifically speaking. We also have to be effective in the way we communicate science. And that's very important for the forum. Empowerment. It is not just us, it's the members of the forum, which we have reached already, I think, 300 over the last week, which is great and speaks of the leadership and it speaks of the need of a space where we can share, where we can use, and where we can learn from each other. And of course, and I already mentioned this, socialization of science. What do we need the science for? We need to translate science into something that is understandable for our different audiences. The programs that we have built over this past 5 years, we have 5 main ones. This is one, coffee breaks. This is kind of the leading or star program. The Woman in Water, which is another one. You see the people that we have, that have been participating on these events directly. The Science Talks, that is supports the science development, the updates that are going on in terms of research and young professionals. And Open Mic, which is an initiative led by Samuel. That sounded like my kid because my kid's name is also Samuel. So, and the Mythbusters, also led by Sam, and it's been very, very helpful in describing things that we sometimes assume is understood by the community, but it's not. So it doesn't help. And of course, we have key projects that we have developed. One, the pilot program of transboundary aquifers. And it started with the Allende Piedras Negras Maverick Aquifer Basin that has produced 4 deliverables, all of them accessible in the website that you can actually go and research, and has impacted a population of around, those numbers are estimates, of course, of the population that this could have an impact on. The One Coast, One Community Initiative, which is a water quality monitoring and coastal erosion on the Tijuana, San Diego coastal. And we are just about to start phase 2 of this initiative to expand that monitoring level, the monitoring system along the coast to help the community with a lot of science community involvement in this project. We also participated in the identification of recharge zones on this Zona Metropolitana de Monterrey. And I'm sorry for the velocity, the people that are doing the translations. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be fast, but I know that you might be struggling. So we produced that report that identified vulnerable zones of the recharge areas are on the Zona Metropolitana de Monterrey, which was very helpful. And we are working with our partners in Mexico for a phase 2, which is the quantification of that recharge. And of course, the Binational Groundwater Task Force, there was actually a deliverable of the, I don't know if you remember, the Transboundary Water Conference that took place in 2020, just during the pandemic, which was the first conference of the forum. There was a task force, Binational Groundwater Task Force, that is still working, and we are about to deliver the first report of fact sheets of transboundary aquifers in the border region, in the complete border region. We build community and we build knowledge through the community. The Binational Institute is another important initiative, which is everything is, it's an educational course development platform, accessible, free, where members and the audience or whoever is interested in sharing their knowledge can do it here in the forum. And they can be free, they can be in any format that we want to. It depends on the author. So far, we have 3 courses, all bilingual, that you can access. And we're trying to invest more on this initiative because it has been very successful. It has worked pretty well with our partners on the Lower Rio Grande and on the Tijuana River Basin. We have strategic alliances with partners, and I'm not just, I'm not going to name all of them, but you can see here who are we working with. In 5 years, I mean, this has been a lot of work, but we're very, very thankful for the trust, for the commitment, and for believing in what we believe. Our donors and sponsors, of course, and they are here today, and they will speak with us today. Arizona Water Resources Research Center, Texas Water Resources Institute, North American Development Bank, University of Texas at Austin, California Water Resources Institute, and TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So thank you guys for all your help. In terms of media and public engagement, this is how we have grown. This is media presence. You can see where we are right now in 2025. We're just, the trend is going. It's important what we're producing has made an impact. Of course, we have grown in our social media channels. And this is just organic. We have not fundings to invest on, on growth on social media platforms. This is organic growth. So we consider this true growth. And of course, the media presence has been very helpful. This is the traffic in our site. This is where the people are coming from on your left. Of course, it concentrates in Mexico and the US, but you also see a lot of presence from Europe and Africa that actually has visited the site, and even Australia, Singapore. We have people that we talk with Singapore. We have a 500% increase in traffic in the site over the last 5 years, which has, those numbers speak a lot of our presence. And on the right side, you have more narrowed down where is our audience or traffic coming from in US and Mexico. So you basically see the basins delineated there, the transboundary basins, and the coast as well, the East Coast and the West Coast. So these are important numbers that reflect our networks, our network. Of course, I already mentioned this. We are about to get to the 300 members, all the way from California and Texas on the US side, and all over Mexico, actually. And this is the members by type of institutions. Academic, of course, covers 50%. But then government is 20%. So it's important numbers out there representing and showing that this is a space that we can learn. right? Anyone can learn, anyone can share. So it's important. And then followed by non-governmental organizations. And the private industry is there too. So it's important that we are touching all different sectors. By expertise, we have basically 50-50 on the Rio Grande, the lower Rio Grande in particular, more strongly than the upper Rio Grande, and the Colorado River Basin and Mexico, the Colorado South Basin and Mexico, more than the upper part. So it's pretty balanced, the way of the expertise and the topics of expertise, and this is pretty synthesized, but you can see where most of the topics or issues that are addressed by our members tend to be focused on the management part of water resources, followed by surface water, then groundwater, which I was very pleased to see, and then policy and regulations that can also be included on water management. But that's how the distribution of the field of our experts goes about. And finally, of course, money. We have raised over the last 4 years, not even 5 years, because we became nonprofit 4 years ago, or probably 3.5 years ago. So we were able to raise money after we became nonprofit. Close now to 300,000, which is not much, but we have done miracles with that money. I can tell you that. We have gained the Transparency Candy Platinum Seal. So we're doing everything that as a nonprofit we should do to be attractive in terms of donations, and we're not living the best conditions right now to attract federal funding for this type of work, but still, I mean, we are used to work with support more of the community than actually the funds. We have ways to donate, of course. We have volunteering work, partnerships. We have our store. We even have developed an online store that you can actually buy pretty cute hats that I wasn't able to get to all the teams so they can wear it today. But I'm sure Marco will help us in social media to advertise those caps. And, so this is the Binational store. We haven't had a store there to sell. Looking ahead, we need to focus on, of course, keep strengthening all those 17 working groups that we have built, because we need to incentivize the binational work. It's not going to happen just like that. Even though we created the framework for that, we need to keep incentivizing the binational work. We need to keep working on the communication, the effective communication of the outreach component of the forum. And of course, the sustainable funding. We need to keep knocking doors. We need to keep asking for support and help. And that's the only way to keep growing and to be sustainable. And we will invest more on the Binational Institute. The educational component, I think, has not just educational, but training component has a lot of potential for the forum, because there's a lot of need of education that is targeted to binational water issues. And of course, develop consultancy services, especially for the private industry. So more services develop. With that, I hope I didn't take much time for today. Probably I did, but I'm going to hand over to Samuel.
And I think gracias, Rosario. Thank you. Good seeing everyone. And I mean, it is the 5th anniversary, so we have just to do a quick summary. While it is quick, it took a lot of time. So I just want to highlight that this was a lot of effort, a lot of time, and all of that done with a lot of gratitude, with a lot of pressure. And let me see. Okay, so now the one other thing, I got it. Now, there is just one last thing that I want to mention, and is to recognize everyone. I want to remind everyone that the forum is yours. It's not Rosario's, it's not Samuel's, it's not anyone's. Whenever you have an event, whenever you want to host something, please, I mean, this is what we built this, to have this forum. Many of you have used it. I just want to, once again, make sure that you are aware that yeah, if you are thinking of an event or something that you want to share with the community, let us know. We will be really happy. So now let's actually go and talk with to have our conversation with, well, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I will start with Gabe Eckstein, professor at Texas A&M, law at Texas A&M. He focuses his research on teaching on water, natural resources, and environmental law and policy at the local, national, and international levels. And Gabe has been a really good supporter of the forum. Could we move to the next one? And Sharon, of course, Sharon has been also another good supporter of the Permanent Forum of Binational Water. She's the director of Arizona WRRC, professor and specialist in the Department of Environmental Science, an endowed professor, and distinguished outreach professor. Sharon, we have crossed quite a lot of our paths, and we are really happy to have you here. Welcome. And then we have Salvador López. Salvador López is the CEO of NADBank, where he oversees the environmental integrity of the bank's operation and project evaluations. He's bringing over 20 years of experience in environmental, water, and sustainability issues with significant expertise along the border. Salvador, bienvenido, welcome. And we have Eddie Moderow. And Eddie is the manager of the U.S.-Mexico Border Affairs Program of the TCEQ, Texas Commission of Environmental Quality. He works with the agency officials to design, manage binational projects related to air quality, water quality, solid waste management, and among other things. Eddie, bienvenido, welcome. And we have Erik Porse. Hi, Erik, good seeing you. Erik is the director of the California Institute for Water Resources. He is also an extension specialist at the University of California Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Engineer, he's also a systems person, a good colleague, and also he has been a good leader, person on providing support, a good supporter for the Permanent Forum. Bienvenido, Erik. Welcome. So at this point, I will hand my conversation to Gabe.
All right, thank you, Sam. Real pleasure to be a part of this. I really want to thank the forum for everything that it's been doing for the last 5 years, and for allowing us lawyers even to be a part of this group. It's been amazing in terms of education for me, especially about this region. I've been really fascinated with the border region for many years, and being able to participate in these kinds of programs has been real pleasure. And let's just jump in, because I think the whole focus of this forum for the 5 years and the purpose for it being here is to focus on the water issues in the binational context in the border region and even beyond, but still in the binational context. So I want to start with our panelists here today on the question of, from your perspectives, from your various, whether it's career opportunities or research or even personal experiences, what is the progress that you've seen in this border region on the binational level in the realm of water? That's it's a broad topic. We know there have been some progress made, but from your perspective, what have those progress areas really been? Let me start with Sharon, please.
Well, thank you, Permanent Forum and Gabriel. Congratulations on 5 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some words. We have to be really quick, and I apologize to the interpreters on that. Originally, we were told 5 minutes, but then the last time we were told 3 to 4 minutes, and I have my timer here. But I have a few things to say. These are big questions. So I am going to speak briefly, but there are multiple vantage points As some of you know, on the panel and in the audience, I work globally, particularly on groundwater issues. But then I work in the Colorado River Basin, and I've worked on surface water there as a member of the Central Arizona Project Board of Directors for 12 years. I'm no longer on that board. And then I work on groundwater, and particularly through the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program. And as I was thinking about this in my comments, Gabriel, I thought about, I really am thinking about the border region, but binational collaboration does extend beyond the border region. And I started thinking about that because you showed fewer upper basin rather than lower basin participants from the Colorado River. But the collaboration with Mexico through the treaty is extremely important for the entirety of the Colorado River Basin, not just the states closer to the border or at the border. And so there have been tremendous advances despite the challenges of water scarcity. And we don't have time to go into but we do have the benefit of a multi-layered or tiered collaboration that involves government agencies, universities, depending on the situations, NGOs, tribes, and others. And and I'm going to get into this in the second question, but the value of the forum and other dialogues is it allows us to share information and come together. And I want to just take a very short time, and somebody already put in the chat, Rosario was a speaker. A few of you participated, maybe online, maybe in person, at last week's WRRC annual conference, which for the first time focused on shared borders. This was our 23rd annual conference, and last week it was on shared borders, shared waters, working together in times of scarcity. And we had extensive participation from the International Boundary and Water Commission, both sections. We had our governor, we had NADBank there. We heard updates from Reclamation about the status of binational and within US negotiations on the guidelines for sharing cutbacks on the very stressed Colorado River. And I mention all this without mentioning names here, is that we've accomplished quite a lot. Our collaboration has been very good, but there's so much work to be done. But what I think is really most important is that the speakers at our conference, and I think the general tenor of it, was that we have challenges, but I think we have accomplished a lot through collaboration in addressing those challenges. And there really is a tone of optimism. Despite all that we know is wrong, we want to focus on solutions. And I think that's where the focus is. And I do want to mention that maybe I've gotten a couple of you interested in who talked and on what. And I'm going to put a link in the chat that's connects to our agenda, where all the recordings are now posted, and very soon the PowerPoints will also be posted. So I just want to say that I've seen a lot of collaboration despite challenges and setbacks, and I think we've got the partnerships broadly construed to work forward and accomplish more if you want to talk about the next 5 years. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sharon. Let me move on now to Eddie, please.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Eckstein, thank you. A huge congratulations to Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, Rosario and Samuel. Thank you for the invitation to be on this amazing panel. I haven't said this until now, but Dr. Megdal is a hero of mine. Dating back like 6 years ago, I was inspired by a podcast, Talk Plus Water. And Salvador on this panel, I count as a friend going back many years. And I'll see Dr. Sanchez next week in San Antonio, Salvador as well, and Dr. Megdal's conference last week. They all tie together. Each one strengthens us. I'm based in Austin at the headquarters of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, an agency 3,000 people strong. We're an environmental regulatory agency. We write permits, We investigate to ensure compliance with those permits, and then we enforce when necessary. But critical to today's discussion is TCEQ is the water master agency for the state of Texas. Contrast that with the Colorado River, not the little Colorado that runs through Austin here, Texas, the big one out west. The federal government is the water master, Department of Interior. And in Mexico, Conagua is the water master of the Rio Bravo Basin. And so that makes TCEQ the counterpart to Conagua, which is not always evident or the most natural alignment. But the question, Gabriel, over the past 5 years, that's an interesting time frame because it almost perfectly overlaps with some major happenings. The global pandemic, the creation of the permanent forum of binational waters, while we're here today really celebrating, but also the current 5-year cycle under the 1944 Water Treaty of the Rio Grande. And my comments are based around surface water and the Rio Grande under the 1944 Water Treaty from Fort Quitman on down. So in these past 5 years, we've jointly overseen the largest water delivery deficit in the treaty's history at this point in the cycle. Roughly 1 million acre feet. The presidents of both nations have had to be directly involved. And I don't consider that a great thing when we've been unable to manage this issue at the appropriate levels. And with the cycle closing in October of this year, there's no clear resolution in sight. The current deficit combined with the ongoing delivery obligations, I mean, it's so severe that trusted sources, so members of the permanent forum of binational water, have shared with me, they've speculated that we could enter a third consecutive cycle in deficit. That would mean 15 years of delivery shortfalls. So damage from a lack of treaty deliveries is not recovered. So in other words, this isn't just a temporary crisis, but it could mark the beginning of the end. But wait, what was the question again? I'm sorry, you asked about progress. I apologize. But so the progress I want to highlight is relationships. We talk about trust so much, it can almost become a little tired, but it's so vital. Over the past 5 years, the 4 principal agencies have had over 25 in-person meetings. The 4 principal agencies being TCEQ is the water master, Conagua is the water master, in both sections of the IBWC. We've had these chaired by the commissioners of IBWC and SILA in person in these different locations, ranging from the Ciudad de Mexico to El Paso to Monterrey, Nuevo León, to McAllen, to El Paso, in Austin on a couple occasions, and as far away as El Paso. We end up going to El Paso a lot. But that's like 20 plus government officials that know each other on a first name basis. We know each other's hobbies, family. We've had meals together. I think this is one of Dr. Megdal's prime focuses is share that meal together. We've had dozens of video calls, meetings that last 3 days, meetings that last 2 hours, impromptu, planned months in advance. We use WhatsApp to communicate with each other. That's when you know you've really broken through. But I don't want to be short-sighted or myopic from my position here, because I'm just talking about the government experience, that of the 4 principal agencies. But I think everything really happens outside of that. So the biggest success for me in this 5 years is the creation of the permanent forum of binational waters, the binational Rio Grande Symposium led by the Texas Water Foundation. That's happening again this November. The conference that Dr. Megdal led last week in Tucson, the many podcasts, publications, scientific publications, both long and short, social media. I hope y'all have seen Dr. Sandoval's short clips on different Rio Grande topics, the Mythbusters on YouTube. I really enjoy those. Those are the successes, connecting us across borders, jurisdictions, and really understanding that we're all fighting for the same thing. There's amazing people involved, so it's always inspiring to continue to work with those people. We'd all look a lot more successful if it would just rain in the Rio Grande Basin. Always praying for a benevolent hurricane, but some other successes that I'll just share. I want to highlight the leadership of TCEQ Commissioner Bobby Janeka, who has led this over the past 5.5 years. He's been vital to binational collaboration from Texas's perspective. His infinite energy, dedication, and skills. IBWC and SELA have been reborn. And I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but I think over the past 5 years or so, they have come out of the darkness. And I salute the work of Commissioner Maria Elena Giner. And I'm really excited about this next chapter with Commissioner Chad McIntosh, who has led at the highest levels, is bringing, an EPA background. His deep well of experience and skills brings such opportunity for us. And I'll close with what I think is the biggest success of all over this past 5 years, and that's Minute 331. Not necessarily because of its content. Its content was baby steps, but because of the process. I was honored to be a part of that effort, which was brilliantly led by IBWC and SELA. A little behind the scenes scoop, we actually finished negotiating and writing that a full year before it was signed. That was peculiar. And then do y'all remember when it was signed? It was signed on US Election Day. So talk about burying the headline. But that's I guess how it was done. But more than anything, what made Minute 331 a success was how it brought us together more than I ever could have thought possible. And just like, I remember one night in Monterrey, everybody drag and tail, getting in late, running into colleagues of CONAGUA and SELA at midnight, checking into the same hotel, and still managing to share a few laughs. And that kind of trust and camaraderie, that's the real progress that I'm excited about over the past 5 years.
All right, thank you. And it's really good to see. I mean, as I said, you want these personal perspectives, and also from your particular backgrounds, academic backgrounds, practice in government background, and you're hitting very different points, but they're certainly related. I mean, academic successes, relational community development successes. So these are all great. So let me move on. Erik, I think, is with us now. If you want to take the floor.
Thanks, Gabriel, and apologies that my background is flipped. I can, if that looks like that way to you, okay. Not a symbol for how California views relationships. I would say the opposite, actually. In the California Institute for Water Resources, we're one of the national institutes, and so we're very pleased to be here and support the Binational Forum, and also in collaboration with our colleagues in Arizona and Texas. This is incredibly important. So if we just kind of start with the University of California, there are incredible linkages between the US and Mexico around the issue of water and groundwater and water management, and really strong collaborations that I see on the part that have been growing over the past decade that I've been in California working on water issues. Sam is obviously one of those linchpins, but also multiple other colleagues. And what we do see is a real cross-pollination of work and binational interests on the part of those who would like to find solutions for water management. At the scale of the state, obviously in the past 5 years, there have been some headlines that have dominated. One would be the issues in San Diego and Tijuana with coastal water quality. Another is, as Sharon and others and Eddie were mentioning, along the Colorado River Basin. But there have been over a longer period of time, we have institutions to try to address these. And I think that can't go without recognizing that in a lot of places of the world, when you're considering transboundary water issues, the institutions to be able to adequately find solutions are not present. And we do have them here, and they have continued through political periods, through different eras, and now into an era when we recognize that droughts are growing more severe, or evaporative demand is increasing, that's increasing water scarcity. And so it's the challenge of these institutions to be able to stand up to the speed of the change that we are seeing with water resources availability. And I think forums such as the Permanent Forum are incredibly important because they provide avenues for sharing the best available information. And at least from our perspective in California, as I started off with the research and policy collaborations that we see, those are continuing. And actually, for to the extent of our institute and colleagues, I think growing. And I think that provides the basis for solutions going forward as we try to make sure that the institutions that we have can adapt to 21st century challenges around water. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And we also have Salvador, if you want to take the stage, please.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you for the invitation. Let me start out by congratulating the forum and really applauding some of the success you've had. I was looking at the summary of the accomplishments of Rosario and Samuel, and they're pretty impressive, right? Some of the numbers you have in terms of the people you've reached in the hundreds, some of the key studies and science that you have been developing, particularly for aquifers, and your efforts not only to generate that knowledge, but to disseminate it are very needed, just as Erik just mentioned a minute ago. The one slide that really caught my attention was the one on the participation from different countries, right? And I think that's something that we see in our own utility management institute. We see people signing in from all over the world. I know that IBWC and NADBank are studied around the world as an example of collaboration. So just to keep us a little optimistic, right, Eddie, that even though there's a lot of work to be done, the fact that we have institutions like this and fora like this, I think are very, very important. So to answer the question, this, of course, is from the vantage point of the bank. So this is focused more on infrastructure and financing related to collaboration. But in general, what I see is that, as we know, we've had a crisis that Eddie alluded to in the last 5 years, not only in the Colorado, not only here in the Rio Grande, which is probably what we hear a lot in the news, but also, of course, in the Colorado, but even beyond that, right, with local aquifers and local streams, we do have a crisis compounded by growth, increasing demand, and so forth. But as they say, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So I think the silver lining of this is that we do see people more aware, more interested in finding solutions, and actually mobilizing resources. Just as a few examples, we all know about El Paso and San Diego efforts for direct potable reuse. I mean, they started years ago or decades ago, but I think it's a testament of how the cities are really now needing to cope, and they're actually moving forward. And I think El Paso, San Diego, you would kind of expect it, right? But from El Paso to be a front runner of these, I think it's very impressive. And I think that's something to be saluted. And what we see now, it's cities in Mexico, particularly the bigger ones, Monterrey, Tijuana, actually advancing similar indirect potable reuse projects in this case, but actually seeing these as a solution. And this is something that maybe a decade ago you wouldn't really see actually moving forward. And I think it's it's being discussed with not only the environmental community, but even the economic development secretaries, the finance secretaries that do see water as a big constraint to the growth and to their ability to attract industry and provide services. So I think that is the silver lining that we see. Closer home, we are currently supporting the counties of Hidalgo and Cameron doing a water resources roadmap. And it's also, again, a testament of how people are actually coming together, town is coming together to try to address this crisis and looking at non-traditional solutions, right? So, I mean, a lot of what you see in the Valley, and this is just my limited experience there, it's, you know, using surface water or trying to pump more groundwater or bring water from further away. But I think people are now realizing that creativity is needed, that you need to reuse, you need to manage your aquifers, you need to manage stormwater to make beneficial use of it. So again, that's another example of the momentum that is being created. Erik mentioned the Tijuana River issue. You know, I think sanitation is an area where we do see quite a bit of collaboration. Sometimes it feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, but we're really see some movements. I mean, Tijuana, there's been tens of millions of dollars being spent by both governments and by NADBank, by the way, to address those situations. We see progress in terms of the big treatment plant being finally in operation, sewers being fixed, and so forth. Nuevo Laredo, similar situation. We structured an $80 million project to bring about improvements to sanitation and wastewater treatment. Juarez, again, tens of millions of dollars to improve sanitation. We're in the process of expanding, or we're talking to them about the financing alternatives of the new wastewater treatment plant they need. And these projects are important because they obviously, number one, address water quality issues and human health issues, but also because they create the basis for reuse, right? So when Juarez think about a new wastewater treatment plant, they're already thinking about reuse, right? Where do we locate it? What technology we need, and what kind of financing structure can we arrange so that the reuse becomes not only a way to cope with scarcity, but also to generate revenue for the utilities. The other thing where we see progress, and this is very NADBank centric, but I think where we're trying to make progress in is in agriculture, right? We all know that we're not going to solve the water crisis without taking a strong look at agriculture, using 70-80% of the water, depending where you are. And again, what we're trying to do at the NADBank is to create new financing mechanisms to support the improvement of infrastructure, be it at the primary level, but also at the parcel level with the irrigation methods and techniques, but also trying to see how we can switch the whole business model of the farmers to not only conserve water, but to use water in crops that produce more value and that are less water intensive. Of course, that won't work everywhere, but there's areas where we can see that. But we're trying to see this in a way that the water we save is not used to grow more stuff, right? Not to do more of the same with the water that are being saved, but rather to try to have that water put in a different use. And then just to close, because I know I'm over my time, we also see some positive traction from the private sector, which was the way, Rosario, I know it's only 12% of your members are private sector, but at the end of the day, they use the water, they use a lot of water, and we see momentum from the private sector interested in water conservation and water diversification, not because they're necessarily Mother Teresa, but because they do see how water scarcity becomes a risk to their investments, a risk to their operations, and of course, there's also to have a social license to operate. So that's another area, industrial parks, manufacturing, that we're trying to tap into to bring about solutions. And I'll stop at that, Gabriel.
Oh, thank you. This is great because, as I said, we wanted so these areas of progress from different perspectives, and so we have progress identified in areas of research, academic relationships among communities, developing trust, institutional developments, institutions on both sides of the border, and then of course growing interest in all these communities, at the academic, at the institutional, at the local community, the actual people being interested in actually finding solutions. whether they be in the private sector, the public sector, in farming, in industry, and so on. So these are all really wonderful to hear that there is, quite a bit of progress being made on all these fronts. We are going to, slowly run out of time, so I'm going to ask maybe if all of you could be a little shorter on your next question, because we want to have a bit of time for Q&A. With all this, this wonderful progress in the background, where should we be going? Should we be doing the same thing, or do we have other priorities and challenges that we really need to focus on? And I want to really sort of think about it in terms of the permanent forum of binational waters, because the idea here is, this is creating the forum and the space and the relationship to facilitate more progress. So what is it that we should be focusing on? Where should we be going? Taking into account all the progress we've made, but also the challenges that are still ahead of us. So let's start again with Sharon. You're muted.
Sharon, you're
I'm
on mute.
muted, sorry. Yeah, I didn't want to make noise while I wasn't speaking, sorry. But I'm going to take a little longer than I was originally planning. And Eddie, I'm giving you license to use that graph that you said you might share, because I want to share one slide. And so I think I can, because I'm a co-host. And you're seeing my slide, right? And this is a slide I showed and already been alluded to about eating with your partners. And so I want to just, and I have to read this because of the interpretation. Otherwise, I would just say, read it yourself. But I've listed these factors contributing to successful diplomacy, a functioning mechanism for cooperation. We have that with the International Boundary and Water Commission, and I want to note that former Commissioner Jane Harkins is on this call. I've seen her name in the list of participants. Thank you, Jane, for being here. Mutual respect contributing to trust. Gabriel, I think you just mentioned the word trust, very important. Involvement of interested parties, I'm going to come back to that. Good communication, I'm going to come back to that. Persistence and patience, eating with your partners, leadership, and these additional factors of transparency and sharing lessons learned. And I show a picture on the way to the Ciénaga de Santa Clara that was hosted by Roberto Salmon, late commissioner for the Mexican section. We honored his memory and legacy at our conference last week to acknowledge his tremendous contributions. Now, I want to bring this to your question. I didn't just show this because I like showing a list. So I put the link in there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. As I think about the forum and what it's done and what it could do, it's taken advantage of this opportunity to use virtual platform for sharing information. And Sam, you've done a lot, over the years in that, and Rosario. And one of the things I pointed out was, unfortunately, with the pandemic, we lost the opportunity to meet new people in person and to share meals. Well, we've gotten beyond that, but we've also had the benefit of realizing that, hey, there's so much we could do without the travel, without necessarily being in person. And so I think the forum is just a great example of what you can do in this kind of platform. And that the forum, and I want to give you credit. I mean, because what I'm saying is keep doing these things that you've been doing. You've been inclusive and open in terms of your welcoming to everybody. We consulted you, Rosario, when we wanted to do our interpretation for our conference because of how successful you've been with the forum and interpretation. It's inherently binational as it's established. It's not a US thing asking for Mexico and vice versa. It's inherently binational. It includes the entire border. And that gives us a tremendous opportunity to learn from each other. My observation is there are very few people, there are some out there, who have expertise in both or all of the transboundary river systems and so forth. And so we need to bring the Rio Grande, Rio Bravo people together with the the big Rio Colorado, not the Texas Rio Colorado people, and cross-fertilize and mix the regions in programming. And so I want to give you credit for doing that, and I want to encourage you to continue to do this. I think also the focus on science and policy is very important, giving opportunity for people of the different backgrounds and different findings, let's say, and uses of information. And then the focus on mentoring and bringing people at different stages in their careers together, and the focus on women. And Rosario and I and some others on the call, I'm wearing my Women in Water Diplomacy clip. We want to help each other get the word out. We want to help each other share. We want to help each other learn. And so so many are working in complementary spheres and fields. And my encouragement or my suggestion about keep doing this, keep doing what you're doing. And if people want to participate, as you said, let us know and we'll do things. And so I want to thank you and really look forward to the next 5 years.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. Let's move on to Eddie, please.
Thanks again, Gabriel. This slide that Sharon shared just a moment ago, I screenshotted that last week. And it's simple, it's honest, and captures precisely what we need to do. I think in the short term, what priorities, what can the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters do in the short term? Grow the pie, bring in foundations. I was just thinking of the CEMEX Foundation and their holdings in Chihuahua. More participants, more diverse interests, industry, farmers, bring in the resources, create public-private partnerships. Salvador and myself and Chihuahua and Commissioner Janeca led this effort 5 years ago to create a public-private partnership for air quality monitoring in Ciudad Juarez, because we identified a hole that allows us to create binational emissions inventories. It's held us engaged with Chihuahua and INEC, Semarnat, and Ciudad Juarez Ecología. We work together weekly. So then we have like this pretext to work together. So this is creating these public-private partnerships. We know the passion exists for this territory that we're talking about, the length of the border. But how do we measure success of binational collaboration? That's the 3 I's, right? Information, institutions, and investment. And the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, I think, really excels at all 3 of those. We've got dozens. So information like open data sharing, we can never allow data to be, we have to de-weaponize data. And I think that's happening naturally over time. It's got to be open source. Innovative, high-quality research by these universities that serve as a clearinghouse of policy and scientific knowledge. As all of our stakeholders, we come and go to this sector, providing continuity during these times of change. And in institutions, there's dozens of institutions working individually in their own countries on each side. Binational institutions like NADBank and IBWC are critical. Let's create new institutions. I heard Good Neighbor Environmental Board, Dr. Paul Ganster, several years ago, called for a binational water quality institution because that's not IBWC's direct mandate. And the Tijuana River issue took decades, and the Rio Grande really needs some help and assistance and support on water quality issues. So we can formalize these specific areas of collaboration, as the example I mentioned in El Paso and Ciudad Juarez around air quality monitoring. But let's do that, say, with a improved binational salinity monitoring network in the lower Rio Grande Valley for Tamaulipas and South Texas farmers. And investment. So bring resources to our work. I hear a lot of talk, and I love California. I love Tijuana. But can we talk about the level of resources and the difference here? The Rio Grande is under-resourced. It has been for a long time. I'm bolstered by the attention that the Tijuana River topic is getting. It needs that. I think I've seen up to $600 million as some of the recent project costs. Let's bring a fraction of that to work on, to binational work on the Rio Grande. You know, let's, and I love the point that Sharon made about border-wide learning from each other, cross-pollination, what we can learn from the large Colorado River, immense. The Rio Grande is under-resourced compared to the Colorado, compared to other rivers in Texas. Let's look at some binational rivers in Israel. There's some amazing examples there. And I would ask the permanent forum of binational waters to challenge the status quo from time to time, to offer potential roadmaps, innovative solutions, policy recommendations, organize quality events like this one and so many others, serve as a platform. You know, what we really need a platform that's long lasting, that focuses on these transboundary water issues. And I think that's called the Permanent Forum for Binational Waters. Is the best name ever. Long term, a solution is what I would ask for to these wicked binational water problems. Uniting the border on solutions and innovative ideas. You know, I'd just say state agencies, stakeholders are really depending on organizations like this. And finally, I always kind of joke that I wish they drew our country borders differently a long time ago, following watersheds. It would be so much easier rather than, you know, following the dang river, which is right in the middle. So that ties us together. And like Rosario's excellent book, which is a real page turner, she introduces the idea that this metaphor that U.S. and Mexico are like two parents, two divorced parents raising a child. And, you know, what are the prospects if one of those parents walks away? But it ties us together for better or for worse, and we're all dedicated to finding that same solution.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Let me turn over to Erik. Where do you think the permanent forum, this community should be going?
I'll make a pitch for integrated systems approaches to make sure that we're using those and integrating those into the work that we're doing and the efforts that we're undertaking and promoting. And I'm, of course, a little biased because as a kind of integrated systems analyst, that's a lot of what I do. But the value of this, you know, we have traditional kind of systems-based approaches where we can use any number of kind of tools, models, processes to come up with, you know, a set of solutions or possibilities to suggest or to promote. But we also now recognize that simply doing the math or simply, you know, coming up with a very comprehensive, complex tool to identify solutions isn't sufficient, right? And we need to be integrating that in. If you're working at the level of decision makers, bringing them into the process so they can explore those options, use it as a method for dialogue in solving like watershed-based challenges. And that process of it has a number of different names: structured decision-making, collaborative modeling, and so forth, can be a potential tool that a forum like this might think about implementing in coordination with partners on both sides of the borders. Another part of systems-based approaches, though, is making sure we're considering how people are affected, right? And so I liked a lot of what Salvador was saying of thinking about opportunities for reuse, opportunities for efficiency, transitioning with what we're growing and where we're growing it and how we're growing it. There's lots of cross-pollination that needs to take place given what we expect in the future for evaporative demand, agricultural productivity, and as those changes affect our what we grow and where we grow, that's going to affect communities, right? So we need to engage people in this conversation, and having these kinds of integrated approaches that cross, you know, social, natural, technical sciences is incredibly important. And I think that the forum could try to find ways to integrate that into the programs and projects and events that it's having.
All right, thank you. And Salvador.
Thank you. Well, once again, I'll give you my biased perspective from the bank. I do think that at the end of the day, a lot of investment is needed, right? And that could be for in some cases gray conventional infrastructure, in other cases newer approaches, green infrastructure, watershed management, et cetera. But I think at the end, investment will be needed. So building upon Eddie's 3 I's, I think that's a good framework to go about. The information, I mean, I'm happy to see information is being developed for aquifers and other things. I do think that sometimes the decision makers are not necessarily aware of best practices or trends. So how do we bring these issues and solutions to key decision makers with municipal governments, with utilities, and we're really where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. So I think working on information is important. Institutions, the second I, we talked a little bit about binational institutions, IBDBC, NADBank, so forth, and as great as we are, what about the local institutions, right? I think something we see is a lack of institutional capacity, or at least areas of improvement for institutional capacity at the utility, at the operator level, ties into the information, the first I, that people need to know what's out there, right? But how do we strengthen the institutions? How do we bring knowledge? How do we bring best practices? But also, how do we help them improve as an enterprise, which is kind of what they are at the end of the day, and help them be more sound financially and technically to do what? To be able to generate investment and kind of parlay it into the 3 I, the investment, right? And again, here, the capacity to invest, the creativity needed from people like us to come up with new funding mechanisms, the willingness of the operators and utilities to take on those challenges and invest, the political will that is needed. I would say always, almost always, right, in terms of the impact on rates and revenues and so forth. But I think that's something that this forum could try to tie in, right? The information, the institutions, and the investment. And again, not everything is about building stuff. I'm aware of that. I see the value in a lot of the stuff that is being doing. But at the end of the day, how do we kind of bring down to the ground, to fruition, to projects that actually conserve water, develop new water sources, et cetera.
All right, thank you all, and thank you for this great conversation. But we have about, I think, maybe 15 or so minutes, 15, 17 minutes for Q&A. I've seen one question in the chat. If you have any other questions that you'd like to contribute, you pose to the speakers or to the members of the forum, the leadership of the forum, please put that in the chat, or get our attention, and we'll let you ask your question. I do want to touch in on this question that Paul has presented here, because I think it's a really interesting one, and it's sparked a nice discussion in the chat, which is, what is the scope of the permanent forum in terms of its activities? Is it just going to be focused on U.S.-Mexico binational waters, or might it expand beyond that? And I think that the original mandate was to kind of focus on the U.S.-Mexico, but I think there might be space here, as I think Sam and Paul kind of exchanged, and then Sharon came in, to at least exchange information with other basins, and maybe set up a some kind of panels or forums or space for conversations, so that the successes we just talked about a few minutes ago can be shared with other basins around the world. But then we here on the Mexico-U.S. border, we can learn from other areas. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that part. Sam, if you want to add anything, or Rosario, or.
I definitely support the idea of learning, and from other lessons. There are other transboundary regions in the world, totally different, and learning in different way, and there are different mechanisms and different cultures and different contexts. Yes, of course, our focus, our mission is in the US-Mexico border, but that doesn't mean that we cannot learn from other regions. And we have had some experiences. We've done that with AIDA, for example, where we have speakers representing other regions of the world, while the forum was in there representing US-Mexico as well. So I think there is no limits on learning as institutionally speaking, and we are babies. So 5 years, I mean, we have done a lot in 5 years, or even less, 4 years, I would say, from the constitution of the forum as it is right now. But what we can do, the potential of the members of the forum is such. I mean, we have over 300 experts on. There's so much that we can do. We don't have limits. I mean, of course, we only have so much hours of the day that we can use up for work, but the potential of the forum, I think, expands even the US-Mexico border, and I think we can collaborate, and I think we can do something. As Sharon mentioned, and Salvador mentioned, there are other regions that are actually learning from us, not just the forum, but the institutional development in the US-Mexico border. So I think we own that to the community. We own that to the binational work, and I totally support it. I know that we have our hands full, but we never say no. I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
No, I just two observations. Well, one observation with two parts. Something you just said, Rosario, about learning from US-Mexico. I'm just going to say that I don't know of any other commission setup like we have here on the US-Mexico border in terms of the relationship of a binational commission and a treaty that has a mechanism for, I'll call it improvements. I think we're not allowed to say amendments, but improving the treaty and its functions and its operations, the whole minute system. I think it's very unique. Secondly, what we do not have, I think almost anywhere, is a forum like this. This is something unique, and I think this is something that can be shared beyond. I think we've got a question here, or comment about virtual water. The idea that I think Tony Allen was the one who first came up with virtual water 20, 25, maybe more years ago. The idea that you use water in one location to grow crops, and then you send those crops across the world. You're effectively transferring water. That's the concept of virtual water. I don't believe that's ever been addressed by the forum, has it?
Not directly, no. We all, we haven't got that far, I guess, in terms of research, but that's a good topic. I mean, that definitely, and not just the forum, I think the research itself, and I know some of our experts in the forum have dealt with this, and America Lutz, I believe you have worked on this as well from the Colegio de Sonora, but I think that we need much more on that, and it's very timing.
Yeah.
I mean, those elements of research.
Sharon.
Could I just kind of address that a little bit? And also I wanted to connect to something Salvador said. Salvador, I don't think talking about agriculture and incentives to save water through efficiency improvements is a NADBank thing. It is pretty much all of our thing, because with agriculture being the largest user of water and finding our water supplies shrinking due to changing climate and non-use of non-renewable groundwater, that's all of our issues. And so it's great the NADBank is taking a active involvement and a lead in this, but I think that's all of our issues. And it relates to this issue of virtual water. And at our conference last week, Professor Ben Rudolph from Northern Arizona University, who's done quite a bit of work on this, gave a presentation. It was just a very small part of the conference. Virtual water is of interest to a lot of people. We have to remember that we're sending water other places, but we're also bringing in water through things that we buy. And so it's a huge topic. It's a global topic, and there are people doing research on it. So maybe this is something where you'd want to bring in some experts to talk about this through the forum.
And just hi everyone, I have to go, unfortunately, but it was super nice seeing all of you. Like I know Rosario, congratulations, and the entire team that is here. Thanks everyone. I'll see you around, and anyways, saludos, muchas gracias. Felicidades. Chao, chao.
All right. All right, looking at the chat, there is actually a question for Eddie. Eddie, you made a comment about the beginning of the end, and maybe you can sort of pick up on that.
I think that was just kind of doomsday, you know, the setup for my joke of like, oh, we're talking about positive things, not the negative things. But honestly, the more we work on the Rio Grande and the treaty, it's tenuous. It's difficult to see any change. You know, it's obviously hurricanes is the only solution, and it's like even just standard water management practices are quite difficult from infrastructure limitations, say on some of the reservoir and the named Mexican treaties, that the named tributaries named in the treaty, some of those reservoirs closest to the Rio Grande, Rio Bravo, you know, can't release, so they can only spill, and so it's like how it's difficult to plan. And then I always kind of reflect on a challenge, and I think prior commissioner of IBWC, Giner, in an article a couple of weeks ago, I have the quote here. It says, Mexico's internal water policy is harming U.S. farmers. And so it's just difficult. The Mexico's relationship, the federal state relationship, in the sense that Conagua is the water master, but the state will use, you know, like 95% of the water, of the headwaters. And then like Texas Water Foundation, I think Colin, he said, wait, that's not a new story. Everybody at the headwaters uses more than their fair share. I'm fascinated by this virtual water concept. I'd love to learn more about that. But the beginning of the end would be entering a third cycle in deficit. That sort of undermines the treaty. And it's, you know, more possible than ever. You know, it started in '94 when these shortfalls, these deficits were growing. And then we had some relief. And people stopped working on the treaty for a couple years. And that harmed us because it sort of broke apart the team. But the team's back together now. I'm curious to see where it goes.
So let me pose a question then, and try to push some of you on this. You mentioned '94, Eddie, in terms of when things sort of started to kind of go awry. And I mean, since the '90s, we've had tremendous population growth on both sides, growing demand on both sides, climatic changes on both sides, reduced supplies on both sides. Is the treaty no longer flexible enough to meet the new reality? Or is it simply how we're trying to implement the treaty? What is it that we should be doing to improve those circumstances, though, you know, and you know, to address these problems?
That's a big question. And I do have a long list. I've got like 15 items that in one of my more pessimistic moments, I think I said, it's as if the treaty doesn't even exist. It's just wild water that is being allotted, that's being delivered. That's not true. That wasn't fair of me to say, but I'd encourage anybody else to dive in.
Anybody else want to? And I think I would tie this to the questions we posed earlier to the panelists. Where should we be going? Where should the forum be going? I mean, should we be bringing in more lawyers, to pick apart the treaty and rebuild it? Should we be bringing more engineers to engineer sort of potential solutions to improve the engineering, the infrastructure? Do we need more managers or better managers in the system? I mean, what should we be focusing on? Sharon?
Well, I get very nervous when you talk about bringing in more lawyers, which of course, that's your tendency, Gabriel.
No. I was just trying to scare you.
No, I know, and you did. But in all seriousness, the and I saw Mario Lopez joined. I don't know if he's still on, but I remember back at the World Water Forum in 2012 in Marseille, he gave just a wonderful presentation, and many of us know it to be true about the flexibility associated with the treaty through the minutes. Yeah. And so you don't want to redo the treaty. Frankly, and I'm going to say this a little publicly, and I try never to get into politics at these things. When I was on the Central Arizona Project Board, and in fact, a decision maker, so I'll refer to that, it makes one nervous when the policymakers at the federal level want to connect what's happening on the Rio Grande, Rio Bravo to the deliveries on the US side and so forth. And so if you start breaking it apart, be careful what you wish for, because you could end up with something that's less flexible and powerful than what we have now. So, I do want to give again the commission credit, and this is what I understand. I'm not an expert on the Rio Grande, Rio Bravo, but I understand there's been a desire to kind of install some of the practices of inclusion at the table of some of the different players and having the kind of dialogue. So I go back to this idea of sharing information. Yes, you bring in engineers, you bring in NGOs and so forth, but ultimately the decision makers are the decision makers. And so what you want to do is help facilitate the sharing of that information with the facilitators. So yes, you do get me scared when you start talking about bringing in lawyers, but Gabriel, you're a good one, and that's your role.
Well, I in my defense earlier on, I did say this commission system, this treaty with the minute system is singular in the world. I don't know of anything comparable, and I wouldn't want to mess that up. I really wouldn't. I'm just trying to be provocative because I'm looking for ideas, right? We're trying to figure out the situations. Let me throw out this one. I mean, in the US, we're mostly a bottom-up approach when we're coming to water management. It's local communities and then sort of building to counties to regions and to the state. In Mexico, it's a top-down approach. Is that the problem? That we're coming at it a completely different approach as to water management?
Gabriel, I'll bring your attention to the question by Colin, which relates to it. If you haven't seen it, maybe you want to take a look at it. It's directly related, I think, to the point you just raised.
Yeah. Should the focus be less on the treaty and maybe more on smaller local efforts, cross-border local solutions? Could you do that on the Rio Grande though? On the Colorado? I don't know. I just don't know if local would work in the same way.
Well, maybe Rosario, you might want to chime in here. We've worked together. We've written some papers together on what to do about binational groundwater management. And we do have these institutional asymmetries, Gabriel, as you've pointed out. And we've heard from many that it does need to take bottom-up effort, calling on the part of the local people that we need to do something. But Rosario, I'm curious if you'd like to say something here.
Just quickly, because I'd rather hear from you guys, but on what we have learned and what we could explore, going back to that comment on challenging the status quo, though, that Eddie kind of commended us to do, it depends how formal you want to get. So I think we can do everything that we want at a local, regional scale, as long as this is not constrained or limited by formal governance systems. And I don't think it is constrained. So it's I think the word creativity, it's needed. I think we need to innovate in the way we actually work together. I think it's not enough, the channels that we have developed. I think they are good, but they are overstressed, just our water systems. And we need to release some of that energy to the local community. I totally support the idea of working more locally at the scale that the locals want to work at binational level, or even, at a local level, even if it's in groundwater, could be the pilot for that, right? I'm just, brainstorming here and sending bombs to the discussion, because we're almost run out of time, and I can run too. But what we're seeing in terms of governance systems, at least on the Mexico side, is kind of the limit of the system that is not really working, not at the speed that we need the institutions to respond to the challenges. So something is going to change, and we have seen the signs of those limits already. So we could start working on proving how the locals could work on a bottom-up approach more effectively, more efficiently, and faster than formal institutions. I don't know, and I'm going to leave it that way.
Well, do any of our speakers or any of our forum leadership want to jump in on any of these points that have been made? No takers?
You're not being recorded.
Gabriel, if I could add just briefly, it is important to recognize that both countries are working towards the same thing, and that's, reasonable management of a river. An unmanaged river doesn't benefit anybody, regardless of what country it's in. And that rises to the top as we continue to work together. I also want to recognize how difficult of an atmosphere it is, and the importance of bringing a little lightheartedness to a little levity, some humor, some relationships, so we can stay in the middle of the eye of that storm. Because people, especially leaders and decision makers, are getting beat up from the political pressures. It's really a difficult atmosphere. The leadership of IBWC do it day in and day out. I don't know how they do it, and I really look up to them for that. So also try to bring kind of a daily levity to the situation, but we're fighting for the same thing. I believe that.
Well, I know we're running out of time. I just want to acknowledge Jerry's question here about a focus on environmental issues, environmental justice issues, rights of nature. And this is a topic that I don't know, that has not been it hasn't received a lot of attention in the forum, right? So maybe something to also consider for future.
Environmental justice, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I run the environmental law clinic at Texas A&M, and we've been working on environmental justice this past year. We're going to continue doing it this next year. So now we're doing it sort of at a local level, but we're always interested in other, and I'm not talking litigation. I don't do lawsuits. This is much more of looking for opportunities. How do we improve the environmental conditions in the underserved communities, and whether it's on the border or it's in inner city or wherever. So
there's a long list of things that we need to do, that we have more work. The more than we know, the more than we work, the more that we need to work, and the more that we need to learn. That's what we have learned.
But maybe we're sorry, you should wrap it up now. I think we're.
Yes, I'm gonna just one last minute or two probably. And first and forever, and as always, the thank you. We are very, very thankful for all of you, Eddie, Salvador, Sharon, Paul, Gabriel, for all the support. to the forum. We wouldn't be able to be here without your support. I mean, that's easy as that. And I know it sounds very cliche and everybody says that, but it is technically true for our case. And of course, the audience, those people that actually follow us, that give us comments, that write to us and request information, that want to be part of it, the volunteers. I'm super grateful personally and institutionally for all those passionate, because the only way to do this successfully is with passion, is not for any other reason, because we believe in something. And the team, and you've seen them, and I presented them pretty quickly. I don't give them enough time that they actually deserve, but I am personally very thankful to have them all being part of this effort. And to everyone today, I'm just leaving this session, because we're not going anywhere, just leaving this session for now. And I'm taking some phrases, some words, and I'm hoping that you take them too with you. And I love that one, Eddie, the beginning of the end, whatever it means, right? So it could be good, it could be bad, but you never know. So that's up to us to decide, and I like that as an open mark. Connecting versus among and other. We need to keep connecting. There's no other way. It is hard, and it's the only way to be inspired, and it's the only way to actually build trust. Without connections, without effective communication, we cannot build trust. And even though it's hard, and everybody talks about that, it is the hardest link to build, and it's the only way to commit for the future, whether we like it or not. So we have to be there, and Sharon mentioned some of this. We have to be patient, we have to be loyal, we have to be transparent, we have to be respectful, we have to, all the values that actually the forum has apply to the binational relationship, especially when it comes to water. The cross-pollination, the pollination. I don't know, but you've mentioned that I think it's important what the forum does. It's not just uniting US and Mexico, but actually, the Mexico itself and the US itself, southern US itself, the basins itself are learning from each other in an easier way. We are learning to know. I mean, I've never learned so much from the Colorado Basin until the forum started. So it happened to me. So it happens to everyone that joins these efforts of the forum. The inclusion of the private sector, I think that's key for future development, especially when we have limited resources now. We're living in special challenges. So we need to look for additional sources, not just funding, but also, inclusion of those perspectives as well on the binational conversation. The private sector, the agricultural sector, the other elements of research, virtual water. There's a big list, and we do have the potential to do that. The forum is truly binational. And it's true that water actually unites us, because we can't risk to lose. We cannot have the luxury to lose. So water definitely get us together. It's not easy. It will never be easy, and not especially as drought conditions persist, but it's really the only route. So we're going to be there for good and for bad. And challenging the status quo. I love that. Definitely looking forward for that. I think we are doing it somehow in a way that we have no idea how we still survive here, but we are. So anyway, I'm closing those remarks. Gabriel, I want to give you the last seconds or to say something in representation of the advisory committee of the forum. You've been there from the beginning, and you are here still. So I want to be grateful for you personally and give you the last words to you.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for participating, for engaging, for prioritizing. This is a priority, and it's not just, for us as academics. It's an interesting case study, but it's more than that. People live here. So thank you all for participating, for engaging with the forum. Thank you for the audience for being here. And until next time.